Some stories are written not in centuries but in days. They don't last decades, but shine like shooting stars that illuminate an entire generation. Among these stories is that of an Italian teenager who lived only 15 years, but left such a powerful legacy that many consider him a prophet of the digital age. His name is Carlo Acutis. Born in London on May 3, 1991, and raised in Milan, Carlo grew up in the midst of the ordinary life of any young man of his time. He enjoyed video games, soccer, and hanging out with friends. He wore jeans, designer sneakers, and colorful backpacks. He laughed easily, but there was something about him that defied logic, a deep, almost innate spiritual thirst. His mother, Antonia Salzano, would later say that she was not a religious woman when Carlo was born. Antonia came from a traditional Catholic family but had strayed from the faith in her youth. Her husband, Andrea Acutis, was also non-practicing. The family lived a comfortable life in Milan. Andrea worked in the financial market, and they belonged to Milanese high society. But Carlo, still a small boy, insisted on visiting churches, praying before the Blessed Sacrament, and speaking of God naturally. It was as if he had been born with his soul already turned toward the divine. At 3 years old, when the family passed a church, Carlo would stop and say, "I want to go in and greet Jesus." It was he who led his own mother to rediscover her faith. There was something mystical about his childhood. Beata, the Polish nanny who cared for Carlo, was deeply religious and began telling the boy stories of saints. But Carlo didn't just listen. He asked profound questions that left adults astonished. Why did Jesus suffer so much for us? He asked at age 4. If God loves us, why does suffering exist? At just 7 years old, Carlo received his first communion, an experience he himself described as the most beautiful day of my life. It was no ordinary milestone, but a turning point. From that moment on, according to family accounts, Carlo changed completely. From that day on, he resolved never to miss daily Mass. Every morning before school, he would stop by the church of Santa Maria delle Grazie near his home. He would spend hours in adoration before the Eucharist, often remaining in absolute silence, his eyes fixed on the tabernacle. He repeated a phrase that would become a hallmark of his life: "The Eucharist is my path to heaven." For Carlo, communion was not just a ritual, but a real, concrete encounter with Jesus Christ. He would tell his mother, "Mama, when I receive communion, I feel that Jesus is truly within me." But Carlo never strayed from his teenage life. He loved Pokemon, PlayStation, computer programming, Marvel movies, and AC Milan. He had a special passion for dogs. The family had 2 golden retrievers, Chiara and Briciola, whom Carlo adored. What set him apart was how he dealt with all of this. For him, every tool, every moment, was a chance to draw closer to God. When he played video games, he set limits for himself. When he watched TV, he chose programs that wouldn't hurt his conscience. He said, "Everyone is born an original, but many die as copies." This phrase resonates as a warning to contemporary society, where so many young people seek to imitate empty standards, losing their authenticity. Carlo saw social media and digital culture as both a danger and an opportunity. "The internet is like a knife," he used to say. "It can cut your bread or hurt someone. It depends on how you use it." As a teenager, Carlo developed a passion for computers. Self-taught, he learned programming, video editing, and graphic design. By age 11, he was already creating websites and mastering complex software. He could have used these talents for fame or entertainment, but he chose something different. It all began when Carlo discovered, in a book, the story of a Eucharistic miracle that occurred in Lanciano, Italy, in the 8th century. A monk doubted the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, and during Mass, the host turned into flesh and the wine into blood. The relics can still be seen today in the Church of San Francesco. Carlo was fascinated. He began researching other similar cases and discovered that there were hundreds of Eucharistic miracles recognized by the Church throughout history. It was then that he had an idea: to create a website that would bring together all these miracles, documented with photos, stories, and scientific evidence. He researched ancient accounts, gathered documents, digitized photos, and compiled descriptions in several languages: Italian, English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. He worked long hours after school, consulting with priests, church history experts, and even laboratories that had analyzed the relics. His goal was simple and bold: to show the world that God remains present, mysteriously, in the heart of the Church. "I want people to see that miracles don't just happen in biblical times," he said. "God continues to act today." Carlo's project became revolutionary. He not only cataloged over 150 Eucharistic miracles, but also created an intuitive navigation system with interactive maps showing where each miracle had occurred. He included scientific analyses, witness testimonies, and even explanatory videos he produced himself. This project, started by a teenager, became an international exhibition that has toured dozens of countries, touching thousands of people. The Vatican officially recognized the work, and the exhibition was presented on 5 continents. It was as if Carlo had understood, before anyone else, that the internet would be the mission field of the future. He said the net was full of traps, but it could also be used for good. While many wasted time on distractions, Carlo insisted, "Wasting time is man's greatest sorrow." Carlo also created other websites about Marian apparitions and saints. His dream was to become a professional programmer, to use technology in the service of God. He was even accepted to Bocconi University in Milan to study computer engineering. Despite his brilliant intelligence and intense faith, Carlo lived a simple life. He walked the streets of Milan helping the homeless, distributed food, and talked with immigrants and the lonely. He saved part of his allowance to buy sleeping bags for those without a place to spend the cold nights. But his charity went beyond the material. Carlo had a special gift for detecting when someone was suffering. At school, he always reached out to the shyest or most rejected classmates. He defended those who were bullied, even when it cost him popularity. Once, seeing a classmate being humiliated by other students, Carlo stood between them and said, "If you want to hit someone, hit me." The bullying stopped immediately. Another memorable incident occurred when Carlo saw a beggar being thrown out of a store. He went in, bought the man food, and told the shopkeeper, "This man is also a son of God." He was also well liked among his peers. He didn't mock, humiliate, or seek the spotlight. But when someone needed him, he was there. Teachers and friends describe him as a cheerful, pure, and at the same time mature young man who radiated peace. For Carlo, there was no path to Jesus that didn't pass through Mary. His devotion to the Virgin was deep and constant. He prayed the Rosary every day, usually after morning Mass. He said, "The Rosary is the shortest stairway to heaven." He had a special connection with Our Lady of Fatima. He visited the Portuguese shrine several times and would spend hours in prayer before the image. Carlo also had a great devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe and dreamed of visiting Mexico. In his room, there were dozens of Marian images from all over the world. He researched each apparition, knew the messages by heart, and organized retreats for young people about Marian apparitions. "Mary is our mother," he would say. "She always leads us to Jesus." But Carlo's life would be short-lived. In early October 2006, at age 15, he began experiencing severe headaches and extreme fatigue. At first, his parents thought it was stress from school, but the symptoms quickly worsened. The diagnosis came swiftly and brutally: acute myeloid leukemia, a fulminant form of the disease. The doctors at San Gerardo Hospital in Monza were blunt. Carlo had only a few days to live. For any teenager, it would be a devastating blow. But Carlo faced the illness with remarkable serenity. He told his mother, "I'm not afraid. My life has been lived well because I've always been united with Jesus. Death is not the end. It's just the beginning of true life." In the hospital, he offered his sufferings for Pope Benedict XVI and the Church. He asked that no one cry for him, as he would go straight to heaven without passing through purgatory. He continued praying the Rosary, even with his hands trembling from chemotherapy. In recent days, Carlo had visions that he described to his family. He claimed to see angels and saints by his side. On one occasion, he murmured, "I see a very beautiful light." When his mother asked what it was, he replied, "It's the Virgin Mary coming to get me." On October 12, 2006, the feast of Our Lady of Aparecida, patron saint of Brazil, Carlo passed away. Many saw this as a prophetic sign. The young man who so loved the Eucharist passed away on the day of the Virgin who unites millions of devotees. His last words were, "I am happy because I am going to die. I am going to Jesus." He died peacefully, surrounded by his family. He was only 15 years, 5 months, and 9 days old. The funeral was impressive. Hundreds of young people, schoolmates, teachers, and people who had been touched by his kindness bid farewell to the saint in jeans and sneakers. Even in death, Carlo continued to evangelize. Carlo's death didn't end his story. On the contrary, it marked the beginning of a wave of graces and miracles. Many began praying for his intercession and reported healings, conversions, and spiritual experiences. The first extraordinary incident occurred during the funeral. A woman suffering from terminal cancer touched Carlo's coffin, and weeks later, doctors found the tumor had completely disappeared, with no scientific explanation. But the miracle that officially paved the way for his beatification occurred in Campo Grande, Brazil. Mateus Viana, a 6-year-old boy, suffered from a rare malformation of the pancreas called annular pancreas, which prevented food from passing through. Doctors had given up hope for the child. Matthias's family heard about Carlo Acutis from a Brazilian priest who had learned about his story in Italy. They began praying a novena asking for the young blessed's intercession. On the 9th day, they placed a small relic of Carlo on the boy's belly. The next day, Matthias woke up asking for food, something he hadn't done in months. Medical tests showed that the malformation had completely disappeared. Doctors declared the case scientifically inexplicable. The Vatican officially recognized the miracle in 2019. In addition to the acknowledged miracle, there are hundreds of accounts of graces attributed to the intercession of Carlo Acutis. In Assisi, where he is buried, letters arrive daily from people around the world reporting healings, conversions, and spiritual experiences. A young Brazilian woman reported being cured of severe depression after dreaming about Carlo. An Italian couple on the verge of divorce said they reconciled after visiting the Blessed Man's tomb. Parents of drug-addicted teenagers claimed their children's recovery was achieved through his prayers. There are also reports of apparitions. Several people, especially young people, claim to have seen Carlo in dreams or visions, always with a message of hope and faith. These testimonies are not officially recognized by the Church, but they demonstrate the spiritual impact of the young blessed. On October 10, 2020, at the Basilica of St. Francis in Assisi, Carlo Acutis was declared blessed by Cardinal Agostino Vellini, Pope Francis's representative. The ceremony was historic. For the first time in the history of the Church, a young man of the digital age was elevated to the altar. During the ceremony, Carlo's body was laid out in a glass reliquary. The image impressed the world. Nike jeans, Nike sneakers, and a blue sweatshirt. A saint dressed like any young man today. Pope Francis said that Carlo knew how to use new communication technologies to convey values and beauty. The beatification took place in the midst of the pandemic, but thousands of young people followed it online, something that would certainly have pleased Carlo, the first blessed of the digital age. For many theologians and holiness experts, Carlo represents the beginning of a new era in the Church. He is a digital saint who demonstrates that the internet can be a space for evangelization and sanctification. He is a young man who reminds his generation that holiness lies not in abandoning the world, but in living authentically within it. His message resonates especially in an age of digital influencers selling illusions and artificial lifestyles. Carlo became an influencer of the eternal, someone who used social media to bring people closer to God. Carlo also used to say that sadness is looking at oneself and happiness is looking at God. Simple words, but they sound like the key to a world immersed in digital narcissism and identity crises. Today, his tomb at the Sanctuary of the Renunciation in Assisi is a destination for thousands of pilgrims. Young and old, and entire families travel from every continent to pray before his body and ask for his intercession. Many say they feel an inexplicable peace in that sacred place. The house where Carlo lived in Milan has become a center of pilgrimage. His room has been preserved exactly as it was. Computer, programming books, images of saints, rosaries. The family transformed the place into a small museum of digital holiness. His words spread around the world through social media, a providential irony for someone who loved the internet so much. Millions of young people share his thoughts, his photos, his story. Carlo continues to evangelize through the same means he used in life. Carlo continues to speak to the hearts of a generation lost between the virtual and the real. Amidst digital influencers selling artificial happiness, he offers the true joy of those who have found God. His life questions our values. How much time do we spend on social media? What do we use technology for? What really matters in life? How can we be authentic in a world of appearances? He died young, but left an eternal mark. In his brief life, he showed that it is possible to live a holy life without abandoning youth, without ceasing to be who one is. A teenager who wore jeans and played video games, but whose heart was already in heaven. And perhaps precisely for this reason, his life is shrouded in mystery. Could Carlo be a harbinger of a new generation of digital saints? Could his passing on the feast of Our Lady of Aparecida hold a hidden meaning, connecting him in a special way to Brazil, where his first official miracle occurred? What we do know is that his testimony continues to challenge the world. Amid so many distractions and superficialities, Carlo invites us to look at the essential. And so, his most famous phrase resonates as a call to us all. The Eucharist is my road to heaven. A 15-year-old boy teaches us that holiness has no age, that technology can be an instrument of evangelization, and that each of us can be an influencer of God. This was another episode of Sacred Roots. If you've made it this far, leave a comment. Do you believe Carlo Acutis is already a saint for digital youth? What aspect of his life impressed you most? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to follow us on this journey through the most mysterious and sacred places and lives on our planet. Until the next Sacred Root.